On the 5th of April 2008, Sylvia Casson died in a North London care home, aged 97. She came from a Jewish East End family and appeared to have no heirs or beneficiaries. Her case was passed on to the Treasury's Estates Division and was advertised on their list of unclaimed estates. Her details were picked up by heir hunter Peter Birchwood of Celtic Research. Celtic is one of over 30 companies who specialise in trying to solve these difficult cases in order to earn themselves a commission. As a family-owned firm with researchers in Wales, Scotland and Ireland, it's run by Peter and his stepson Hector. Researcher Saul Marks investigated the Casson case. With an expertise in Jewish genealogy, Saul loves the thrill of solving a mystery.
One of the best parts of my job is the detective work, the sleuthing. To start off with just a scrap of information, a name or a date or something, and turn it into a whole tree with all the different branches. It's really creative to create something like that is really wonderful, very, very satisfying. The other side, of course, is the heir hunting side, the visiting families and explaining to them that they're entitled to something which they perhaps never expected. It's really great to explain that and share knowledge, really.
Although Sylvia had spent the last years of her life in a care home, for most of her life she lived in Dron House in Stepney, in the East End of London. She'd been a popular resident, as estate manager Michael Punter remembers.
She was quite a character, she was. A very nice lady, and she often used to carry a packet of sweets around in her pocket, which she would give to the children. There's a picture of Sylvie on the wall. That's Sylvie in the middle, with her friend Lily. She was quite a cheery lady. She liked going out, she liked socialising, and she had many friends.
This network of friends seems to have become something of a surrogate family for Sylvia.
Well, one of the unusual things about the Sylvia Casson case was the fact that although this was a Jewish family, and many Jewish families are close-knit families, this one was much more fragmented.
Saul's starting point was to check whether Sylvia had married, and if she had, whether her husband was alive.
Many Jewish families put in notices in the Jewish press for births, marriages, deaths, engagement, anything like that. So we had a look in the Jewish press, and here is a death notice of Leonard or Lou Casson in 1983. And the death notice is put in by Sylvia, so it looks like he's the right man.
Finding Lou's death notice had given Saul hope that Sylvia and Lou may have had a family who would be entitled heirs. But Saul made a gloomy discovery.
There's a very important phrase that I noticed in this notice. It says, "Now at peace with our dear son." So they've clearly had a son who's died. And obviously that son's surname would be Casson. So with a bit more digging, we have gone to the death notice for a Robert Casson on March the 7th, 1972, the only son of Louis and Sylvia. So we know they had only one son and that he died, which really proves that she had no heirs from her line of the family.
Now that Saul had proved that there were no heirs from Sylvia's marriage, he had to see whether Sylvia had any brothers or sisters. Looking back over Sylvia's birth certificate, he was able to find Sylvia's parents' names, Joseph and Rebecca Greenblatt. Armed with this information, he was then able to look up the family's details on the 1911 census.
This is the census return showing Joseph and Rebecca Greenblatt, her parents, and all Sylvia's brothers and sisters. And one of the interesting things is that her parents were Russian-Polish immigrants.
Joseph and Rebecca Greenblatt had 8 children. As the youngest, Sylvia had 5 older sisters and 2 older brothers. Now all Saul had to do was try and track them down. Once again, finding Lou's death notice provided Saul with clues. From one of the friends' tributes, he found Carol Levy, the daughter of Sylvia's best friend Kitty. Sylvia played an important role in Carol's life.
You know, when I was growing up, she was always there because my mother and Sylvia worked together as teenagers. My dad and her husband were also friends. So she was always in our home, we were always there. To me, she was little Auntie Sylvie.
When I rang Carol explaining that Sylvia hadn't got a will, she said, no, she does have a will, and I've got it here and I've never opened it, because she didn't know that Sylvia had died. Obviously, most of the profession that we're in revolves around the fact that there is no known will, but sometimes a will does come to light, especially if that will hasn't been lodged with anyone.
Sylvia's will left her £35,000 estate to a number of people, and Carol and Peter Layton were named as executors. Peter was Sylvia's nephew and had stayed in contact with her right up to the end of her life.
When I spoke to Carol on the phone, she was very upset that she'd not been informed of Sylvia's death. She couldn't understand why Peter hadn't informed her, and the office did some further research and found out that Peter Layton had actually died, and he died before Sylvia, which explained why Carol had never known.
Peter Layton died in 2007, a year before Sylvia. His death turned the case around again for Saul. Just as the will had made Saul's services redundant, Peter's death meant that as a beneficiary, his portion of Sylvia's estate was effectively intestate again. Saul had Carol to thank for putting him in touch with Sylvia's niece and an entitled heir, Nina Herman.
I had a call from somebody called Saul Marks, completely out of the blue, asking me if I was related to one Sylvia Casson, and I said yes, she was my aunt. And then he told me that she had passed away and I might be a beneficiary from her will. I was absolutely gobsmacked. I didn't even know she died because I lost contact with her over the years.
Carol's tip-off about Nina really helped to unlock Sylvia's family tree.
It was a shortcut without having to research all of Sylvia's brothers and sisters. It was much quicker to be able to be given a link into the family and then to ask Nina all the questions, and she was very helpful.
Nina's additional family information helped Saul discover who would be entitled to Peter Layton's £15,000 portion of Sylvia's estate. Seeing all her family listed on the tree has been something of an eye-opener for Nina.
Looking at my father's parents, I had no idea what their names were, and I was bowled over to see that they were both born in Russia. I think they must have come here to escape the pogroms, and I feel proud that they felt they could make this journey, which couldn't have been an easy one in those times, and also to have the money to pay for the trip to come here. So it's fascinating, and I feel proud that having come from a generation that obviously had to run away from somebody wanting to kill them.